Welcome to English Mirror. Today, we discuss one of the giants of English literature, Samuel Johnson. Samuel Johnson was an English writer who made lasting contributions to English literature as a poet, playwright, essayist, moralist, literary critic, biographer, editor, and lexicographer. Let's look into it. Samuel Johnson (1709 to 1784) is always referred to as Dr. Johnson, his title bringing with it a sense of discipline and literary authority. Dr. Johnson's achievement was to bring order to the English language and English literature. Few people have had more direct authority over their subject matter than Johnson. His contemporaries and successors might rebel against his constraints, and many did, including Wordsworth and Coleridge, but Johnson established a bedrock for English literature that still exists to this day. In terms of style and preferred ways of writing, Johnson ranks as the most authoritative neoclassicist in our survey. He believed that in order to be a proper literature, not just an effusion, English literature needed three elements: principles, cataloguing, and tradition. Those were the foundations on which a great national literature could be erected and on which native English genius could flourish. Classicism, as Johnson conceived it, did not imply elitism. What Johnson's classicism demanded was an architecture, a shaping principle to the literary project. He believed that one could no more create literature without critical principles than one could improvise the building of a cathedral. Johnson's commanding influence comes through on nearly every page of the magisterial life of Johnson written by James Boswell. In Boswell's description of his first encounter with the great man, we note Johnson's schoolmasterly tone, followed by the detail that the two men drank a couple of bottles of port. Boswell's portrait of Johnson's personality is sublime. Johnson tells us that he prefers the company of young people for pragmatic reasons. First, he doesn't like to think of himself as growing old. Second, young people won't outlive him and leave him friendless in his old age. Finally, young people have more generous sentiments in every respect than old men. Johnson's life was undramatic but interesting, as everything about him was interesting. And thanks to Boswell, we know that life in great depth. Johnson was the son of a poor bookseller in Lichfield, a small town in central England. He would be surrounded by books and poverty all his life. He was educated at grammar school and proved to be a student of unusual ability. He went on to earn a place by merit at Oxford University, but couldn't afford to stay for more than a year. Like many great writers, life for Johnson was financial hardship and struggle. But he wrote in spite of these circumstances. For a while after leaving Oxford, he eked out a living as a schoolteacher and even started his own school. One of his pupils would later become famous as the greatest actor of the age, David Garrick. As a young man, Johnson married a 54-year-old woman. The union was likely based on affection at best and Johnson's need for money. His married life was probably less than blissful. Once widowed, Johnson enjoyed the company and friendship of women, but nothing more. At age 28, Johnson set off for London with the hope of making his way in literature. He found work as an essayist, hack writer, poet, and journalist, all the while developing his distinctively authoritarian literary style and manner. An essay in The Idler from this period stands as an example of Johnsonian sentiment. In 1745, Johnson embarked on his magnum opus, the Dictionary of the English Language. This project would take him 10 years to complete and would ruin his eyesight. It was undertaken without any financial assistance, although Johnson applied in vain to Lord Chesterfield for patronage at the outset of his task. Late in life, the dictionary and Johnson's growing body of work finally brought him fame and a modicum of prosperity. He was awarded a government pension of £300 per annum for his work, appropriately enough because the dictionary was for the English nation as much as it was for the English language or literature. It was a national monument. Fame in his later years brought Johnson the adulation of young dogs such as Boswell, and those years were much more comfortable than his early ones. By the 1760s, Johnson was probably the most famous man of letters in literary London. People travelled from abroad to take tea with him, and he became an institution in coffee houses. Joshua Reynolds painted his portrait. In 1773, Boswell took Johnson on a jaunt to the far western Hebridean Isles, what Boswell thought of as a glorious wilderness. Johnson, always the neoclassicist, saw it merely as a wasteland. Johnson is buried with his literary peers in Westminster Abbey. His career was a landscape marked with mountainous infrastructural projects. In addition to the dictionary, he compiled a complete edition of Shakespeare and wrote Lives of the Poets, the first account of the literary tradition of England. The Dictionary of the English Language preoccupied Johnson from 1745 to the late 1750s. When it was published, the dictionary was the size of a small coffee table. It contained more than 40,000 words with definitions and, as a most innovative feature, a historical set of usages. Johnson cited such writers as Shakespeare and Milton to show how words evolved. In this way, the dictionary was as much a work of linguistic archaeology as it was of current correct usage. This practice has since become accepted as standard for all dictionaries. The principles on which Johnson worked are clearly laid out on the title page. The dictionary was to be descriptive rather than prescriptive. In other words, the meanings of words would be rooted in how people actually used the words rather than how they ought to use the words. As mentioned earlier, Johnson was always on the side of the public. Johnson's definitions are infused with his inextinguishably egoistic spirit. He is the most personal of lexicographers. The definition of lexicographer, for example, reads as follows: a writer of dictionaries, a harmless drudge that bruises himself in tracing the original and detailing the signification of words. Another achievement of Johnson's was the professionalizing of the trade of writing. Along with Pope, he freed literature from the tyrannies of aristocratic patronage. From the 18th century onward, booksellers and book buyers would support the writer. Aristocratic patronage, which is also a kind of aristocratic ownership, would become a thing of the past. Johnson was by no means a revolutionary. He believed in the English class system, in stability and in order. Nonetheless, one of his greatest achievements was in giving writers a new sense of liberty. Thank you for watching this video.